Alright, welcome back everyone. I just wanted to do a quick update video on my PC rig. I've already put 2 episodes out around it, and I had a few questions back on my first episode, which was a case review for this NZXT H510i case. I did have some requests to go through and kind of show how I connected different things, so I'll cover that in this episode. I did then put another episode out because I did have problems with my my AMD Prism Wraith fan and this Asus ROG Strix motherboard. And I addressed that in a separate video. So I'll link those down in the description below. So if you're interested, feel free to take a look at those videos. But this one is mainly just going to be an update and show basically how the build turned out. So to get started, I've already taken off the front glass. As you can see, I took the back off as well. I'm going to flip this down on its back so we can get a better view into what we're looking at here. So, as you can see, we have graphics card here. This is my RTX 2070. We have the Prism Wraith here with my, obviously my CPU goes under here. I'm not going to take this off because it was a pain to get on in the first place, but I do have AMD Ryzen 7 3700X that's sitting under there. I have 2 sticks of G.Skill Trident RGB RAM here. These are each 8 gigabytes, so that's 16 gigs of RAM. Those are pretty straightforward to get in as well. And then it's kind of hidden under my graphics card in the secondary M.2 slot. I have a 500 gigabyte Intel M.2 SSD in there. And I have space right here for another one if I wanted to put another one in there. So yeah, those are pretty much the components. Let me flip this back up, and I'm going to go around the side here to give you a view. I'm going to flip this just a little bit of the back. So, cable management, not the prettiest, not my forte, but that's okay. I did my best. It has some good proprietary loops here to clasp in these big cables. So basically, I guess I'll run you through the process of how I did everything, since I unfortunately, well, I just don't want to pull it all back apart to show you how I did everything. So first of all, we'll go back around the front here. First of all, I had the board out of the case, the board back there. I had it laid down on the box itself. I then went and I put the CPU in, clasped it in. I put the fan in as well on top of it, and I stuck the RAM in and the M.2, which is hidden. I stuck all of those things in before I even put the motherboard in. And if you have questions on how to put those together, you can look up videos online. There's already plenty of videos explaining how to put your CPU in, how to put the fan in, how to put your M.2 in, and RAM. It's all pretty straightforward. So those are the steps that I did. Feel free to look up another video if you want to see more in depth around those. So once I had my motherboard all set with its components, except for the graphics card, I took it, I laid down the case, like so, and then I screwed in the motherboard. And there is for mine, there's a little guiding post right here, so you kind of set it in and then you kind of wiggle it around to get it lined up properly. The rear I/O will have to line up properly in the back as well. So as you can see, it lined up with this rectangle on the back of the case, and then there will be different screws all around the motherboard that you put in. So there's one right there, there's another right there, and then there are several other ones. You'll just have to look around your board to find where they all are at. And you just want to tighten those down a little bit. You don't want to put too much force on them because you don't want to bend or break your motherboard. So yeah, once I had those all in and the motherboard was ready to go, I then put in my graphics card. So in order to do this, you have to swing around back here With my case, since it has the vertical GPU, or the vertical PCIe mount here, where you could put your graphics card in vertically, I had to take this off first. So this is just a thumb screw, you take it off. Pretty straightforward. Took this off, and then I had to take off the two brackets that my graphics card was gonna utilize. So I took off these two here, and so obviously you can see my graphics card I/O is coming through on these two slots here, and that lined up with the PCIe slot that I decided to use for my graphics card. So once I had all of the big components in, I flipped the case around. So we're going to flip her around really quick here, back to the back here, and then I went ahead and I put in my power supply. So my power supply is the Corsair CX750M, and it's a partial modular case. So the main, some of the main cables, two of the main cables, the CPU cable as well as, the CPU cable and the motherboard cable are standard. They just come set in. I cannot take those out. They just are how they are. You can see that there. And so I just ran those. This one is for the CPU. I ran it up and into the case from the back here. And then same with this big boy. So this big boy eventually leads to this one here. I ran it up and then through to the front where I plugged it into the motherboard. So let me flip it back around and I'll show you where those plug in. So this right here is the motherboard one. This will be the biggest cable on your power supply unit. It just plugs in right there, pretty straightforward. And then your CPU one, it comes up, and on my motherboard, it's kind of hard to see, but it's this one right here, and it just plugs in right there, and it should be labeled like how mine is. Let's see if we can zoom in there. Yep, with CPU, as you can see. So that plugged into there, and just to kind of preference everything, all that I'm saying is specific to my specific setup. Depending on the motherboard and the CPU and everything and the power supply that you have, this process could be different, just so you know. Then the next step was to run a modular cable from the power supply down below up to the graphics card. And this happened to be an 8-pin one. This one's built to be a 6-pin or an 8-pin. It just depends on what your graphics card handles. And as you can see, this one says PCIe on the side here. So you know that this cable goes to the PCIe. So pretty straightforward. So those are basically the big plugins in regards to the normal stuff. Now, for some of the smaller things, which mainly is this case itself. So plugging in the front I/O. Let me get a little more situated, and then I will show you plugging in this front I/O into what you need to here as well as on the back. So we will be right back. So we're back. I just flipped the case around and I got my bearings on everything because obviously my cable management isn't the best. So when we get this case, as I went through in my in-depth look at it, it had a ton of cables running here. And most of these were for either fans or for this front I/O here. So your power, USB 3, USB-C, and then your headphone mic jack there. And so all these cables were handled with that. So the first thing that I noticed and that I did was I plugged in this SATA cable. So this top part here was what came on the case, and then I just ran a SATA cable from my power supply unit over there, over to here, and I plugged this in. So this will control, I believe it helps power the front I/O as maybe, but primarily it powers your NZXT control hub here. Now, I have a little gripe with this hub here. So this is the reason why this is a special case. This is the I case. And some people had commented on my other videos around this to go a little more in depth around this. And so this is kind of my explanation around it as well. So this comes installed here, and you have your LEDs and your fans that run to this. You have 3 fan slots and you have 2 LED slots, which is pretty cool because you do get these LEDs that are here, and then on the top front here of the case, up here, you have LEDs. But what they don't tell you with it is that if you want to get additional accessories and plug it into it, you can't actually plug it into this hub. So let me grab this over here and show you what I mean. So I went and I picked up this NZXT H510i Underglow. And it's partly my fault because I didn't read fully the instructions on it, but it says H510i, and this is where their naming conventions kind of get jumbled. For whatever reason, I was thinking that this control hub acted as the H510i, because that would make sense that it would. It's a new case, why wouldn't they put that control module in the case itself? Well, that's not the case, because I got these, very good price on them too. Let me see if I can get it in shot here. 15 bucks. It was like $21, but marked down to 15 bucks. Good deal on them. Got really excited, came back. As you can see, I still have it plugged in here. And then I put them underneath my case here, as you can see down there. Trying to get a good shot of that. However, it will not work with these. No matter what you try, it will not work with the built-in hub that you have on this case. You have to get the H510i. And like I said, it's a little bit of my fault for not understanding properly, but it says under here, under the NZXT thing, you need the H510i, and even down here, requires H510i lighting controller sold separately. And so you can get the controller on its own, and it comes with a set of LED lights, which is kind of silly because you already have LED lights built into the case, but it'll come with a few more strips of LED lights, or you can get them in different packages, like with fans. That's the next purchase I want to get, is some LED NZXT fans that come with that controller. And then I think you can also get them for lights that go behind your monitor, to glow behind your monitor, which would be pretty cool. But for whatever reason, you don't get it with the underglow ones. So, unfortunately for me, the underglow lights do not work right now until I get the hub. So when I do get the hub, I keep this one in here for what's currently in here, and then you can hook up the H510i hub into one of these SSD 2.5 inch slots here. You can hook it up in here from what I have been reading online. So just a fair warning, if you try to get any of the H510i stuff, like the underglow, or anything else that doesn't actually come with the H510i hub itself, it will not work. You cannot plug them into this hub, which I think is kind of silly, but at the same time, if you were to get the case that doesn't have this in it, it doesn't have any LEDs in it, and you wanted to put LEDs in it, and you went with that H510i hub that had the LED strips in it and put them in, it would cost probably like an additional $70, because I think that's what that kit goes for right now. It's about 70 bucks. So on top of the cheaper price for the case, the one that doesn't have the LEDs in it, the non-I series, you would then have to pay $70 to get the H510i if that's what the route that you wanted to go down. Obviously, there are plenty of other options for LED lighting, if that was your preference, but just so you know, in regards to NZXT specific products, this is how it works. So yeah, that's my little gripe with it, but let's get back to what we were looking at here. So, like I had mentioned, I plugged in this SATA cable, which powers this hub, and then that helps run the LED lights down here, as well as the fans on the front. If you did have normal 2.5 SSD, or if you had, it's kind of jumbled down here, but you can go back and look at my original review for this case. If you had a big 3.5 inch hard drive, it would go down here, and you would use these SATA cables from your power supply to either plug into the big boy here or to one of the SSDs here. And then from there, you could loop another cable around to the front of your case, because there's a little hide through there, a little slippage through there. Let me flip my thing back around. You would come out the front here, and then all of these are additional then SATA plugins to your motherboard themselves. Mine has 6, I believe, here, because they're double layered. Let me see if I can get a good shot of that. No, the light's not good enough for you to see that, unfortunately. But yeah, there are 6 there. So you would plug that in as well. The other thing that we had to plug in for the front I/O is the USB. This is my USB port here. So this is what functions for this USB 3.0 here on the front I/O. In addition to that, way down here, underneath my GPU, and this could be different on everyone's case, just keep it in mind, I needed to plug in, zoom in there, this USB 2.0 down here. What that USB 2.0 does is helps connect to the hub as well on the back, and that helps when you install the software on your computer. So, and then other than that, there were some additional front I/O inputs that I had to put on, and they're up here in the front. You can kind of see these here. Those few pins right there, which control like the LEDs and the power button, etc. And for those, I had to read the manual for the case, as well as the manual for my motherboard itself, because in both of those, it explained what was what and where you had to plug those specific things in at. So if you have questions around those, make sure you have those instructions so you can reference them. The other thing I wanted to point out was this front USB-C I/O. It'll only work if your motherboard has the correct plugin for it. My motherboard does not, which is okay, but unfortunately I cannot use this then. It just doesn't work for me. I do have, if I scoot around to the back here, on the back I do have a Type-C plugin on the I/O for the motherboard itself, but for whatever reason I just can't use that one in the front. I just don't have the proper plugins for it. So yeah, that's about it. The other thing I did want to mention was, for me, I personally moved my fans. So there was a fan that came back here and a fan that came on the top. I kept the fan on the back. This is my exhaust fan. And then I moved one to the front as my input fan. And that brings cool air in, kind of circulates, and then kicks it out the back. Whereas if you're sucking in from the top, how it was before, it's pulling in a lot of dust. So yeah, that is pretty much the setup for my build. Now I'm going to jump to some clips of what the LEDs look like all brightened up. All right, so I wanted to just show you some of the different colors that you can get with the utilizing the LEDs just through the CAM software that's used for the NZXT LED lights. So the fan and the RAM, and then obviously the GeForce logo are not connected through these. It's only the light strip above, and then that light strip that's kind of tucked away back there. So this is just standard. I have it set to blue, but you can also change it to different colors as well. So like if you wanted to switch it to purple, I'll just hit apply here, changes it to purple. You can also do like a breathing phase, so it'll kind of pulsates a little bit. I know it's a little bit hard to see. Unfortunately, I'm filming during the day, but it still gives you a decent idea of what you're looking at. There's tons of different options here, like fading, marquee, another version of that, pulse. They have spectrum wave, which we could try that. So this is spectrum wave. Pretty crazy, right? Gets a lot of different colors in there. Then you have like typical alternating. There's wings, which does this. This is pretty cool, and you can change the color on this as well. There's Starry Night. There's Rainbow Flow, which is this one. Looks pretty cool as well. You also have Super Rainbow, which it doesn't go you can change the speeds on this too and the direction that the colors go through. There's Rainbow Pulse, which I think No, I didn't have this one before. I think I just had normal rainbow flow, but this is rainbow pulse. So it looks pretty cool. And then there's also like a candle, which is kind of cool. It just sets it to like a yellow, and then it flickers a little. I know it's kind of hard to see with this in the daylight again, but let's switch over and see what else we have. So those were just some of the preset ones. There's also smart ones, which can monitor your GPU temperature, your CPU temperature, or your FPS. And you can test those out. I typically don't really use those ones, but they're an option. There's also custom ones that you can create yourself. There's audio ones, so if you wanted to sync it up to different audio, you could. I'm not going to test this one because if I play music, I'll get, unless I find a, royalty-free music, it's going to copyright infringe me on this. But you do have it where it can sync to the level, just sync all together through the bass or through the gain. And from my experience, they work pretty well. And then finally, you have a gaming one. I haven't tinkered around too much with this one, but it has a CSGO profile. I don't know if you can change this to be with other profiles or if it's only with CSGO, but you can do C4 arming, health, and grenade effect. But like I said, I think my favorite one right now is Super Rainbow, and I just set it on normal, so it kind of pulsates through. But the Rainbow Pulse is pretty cool too. But that's a little too much for me, so I just do Super Rainbow. So I'll put that back on, and I'll try to get a little bit of a closer look here, so you can see, right back here, get my finger in there, those LEDs behind there, and then you can kind of see them reflecting off the top of the glass panel there. They're the other ones right here, which are hidden behind this. So yeah, that's how it looks. Again, like I said, I'm not testing the music one because I don't want to get copyright infringement on it. Not like it super matters, but just better to be safe than sorry on it. But from my experience, it does work super, super well. Well, I wouldn't say super, super well. It works decent with the music. It just depends on what you're playing. So, and all of this is configurable through the CAM software, which there's instructions when you get this case on how to download it and get set up. There are also different options within the CAM software. I'm not going to dive into too many of them, but if you were to have different LEDs plugged in, you can control those. If you were to have RGB fans, you can control those from it. There's also a GPU overclocker, or just an overclocker in general. However, they give a disclaimer on it. You can look at it when you install the software yourself. It's in beta testing. They have a game monitor that you can use to register FPS performance, but you have to have an actual account for it. For mine, I just continued as guest. I didn't want to have an account for it. The software also shows you information on your build itself, and then it kind of gives you a high-level overview of temperature, load, clock speed, fan speed, on both your CPU and GPU, shows your RAM usage, and then your storage space as well. So then there's also some other options here as well, like adaptive noise reduction. However, I don't use that. You have to log in as well to use those. Just didn't really feel like I wanted to create an account when realistically all I want to do is control the RGBs on my LEDs for not only the light strips, but for possibly my fans down the line. So, and for those, you don't have to create an account. So when you set up the CAM software, if you don't feel like creating an account, you don't have to. Just continue as guest when you log into it. So other than that, that's pretty much all I wanted to show. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know it's not the most, amazing video, but I figured I'd try to address some of your questions. If you do have more questions around, like the audio syncing for the LEDs or the RGBs and music, I could try to get some royalty-free music and do it for you if their demand was high enough. I'm just not going to do it right now. So if you really do want to see that, let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, feel free to hit the like button. If you want to follow along with any more of my PC videos or any technology videos, or I do post game videos as well, feel free to hit the subscribe button and that bell notification. It'll let you know every single time I post a new video. I do post on a daily basis, and if you don't want that many notifications, you don't have to hit that bell notification, but at least hit the subscribe button, because then it will put all my videos in your subscription box so that you can watch them at your convenience. So thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in whatever the next episode may be. Thanks. Bye.